biking, gardening, or hitting the trails around Akron. She's teaching museology at the museology section for the Museum Study Certificate Program at the University of Akron. She's finding time for painting, if she can, and working on as many public art projects as she can get her hands on. She was a Summit Art Prize featured artist. This is just last month, isn't it? Wasn't that last month? October, okay, yeah, so last month. And she said this, she was purging images that were stuck in her head onto canvas. If you ask me, that's like managing a collection, right? All the stuff that's in here, sort of getting it out and getting it to us, and we're grateful for that. Tonight she's going to tell us a little bit about what is in there and what she's going to do with it coming up. She's even going to show us some images. So please welcome, the hearty welcome, Fran Ugalde.
Okay, so I got a call last week about doing this thing, which I wasn't even given a name for the event. Our friend Liz Tyron from Urban Eats calls me. She goes, "Fran, I can't do this. Can you be there?" And I go, "Okay. I guess I can tell a story." Didn't really specify that it had to be Akron-centric. So we're going to work around that, okay? But I'm sort of focusing this story about my art and kind of how I finally have allowed myself to call myself an artist, quotation marks. It's been a term that I find difficult to absorb as a person that makes things. I've been making things for a long time. Starting from when I was a kid. This is not the best visual, so I'm just kind of winging it, so I'm sorry for the lighting. Yeah, I've been painting for as long as I can remember. Making art, I guess I have to thank my parents for putting me in all the classes and just letting me do the thing for as long as I know. This is in the corner of my parents' house, part of which they have sort of turned into their own gallery of my work. This is thankfully in the less visited corner of the house. I tried to hide these guys, but my mom will always grab and be like, no, show them the real stuff. So there is some really, okay. So I am from Chile. I ended up in Ohio in 2001, going to Kent State University. Going to college without really thinking much about my choices or what college meant or what to do with my life. It was kind of like, okay, I do art, let's go do that. And so I started Kent State, and with a very good education, I find myself really honing in on my skills, things that I have been doing in a very instinctual way for a long time, and just taking the classes that are early on. You're training in representational work, a lot of still lifes that you see here. You're just learning about form, shape. There's a lot of paintings before this one, mind you. This is the final product of a long time of training. But I'm showing you guys mostly the stuff that I find to be reflective of the work that I still do now. So I'm not necessarily making this kind of work, but I still apply the things that I learned in these particular projects. So still lifes, representational work. Then I move on to a little bit of landscape work, which I taught. I took a class with Chuck Basham, if anybody knows who he is. He is a fantastic landscape painter from Kent State University, and besides learning how to paint the landscape, he really taught me how to see color. He was he's an incredible painter, and everything about color theory, how colors work together, and coming from someone who's been making work in a very instinctual fashion without training, these things start making sense. You're like, oh, okay, so those two colors do make sense together. But he really helped me out a lot in all of this and the training through landscape painting. And it's funny because some of the themes that started emerging early on that I wasn't really sure about, just using them, have definitely come back in my life now. And it's kind of refreshing when you try to figure out what you're doing and you find yourself being attracted to things. You're not sure why you're attracted to them, but then eventually they come back around. So there's a lot of imagery that I did in my early work, just a basic training, just getting the skills down, color, line, composition, that you go through in the early parts of schooling, right? So landscape painting, especially this image right here, has stuck with me. We live in Northeast Ohio swampland. Poor people that bought this land were fooled. They didn't know they were all swamps. But there's a lot of them around. little characteristics that I've always been attracted to. As we move on to some a little bit more advanced course, we start studying a lot of different movements besides just imitation of, making a still life or drawing from life. Cubism played a big part in my creative life, as it did in the art world. So really, it's a big shifting, from what the standards previous to it were. Basically, it seems kind of silly to say that you realize these things now, but when you're just learning about art and seeing how Cubism forces you to see space in a different way, it's freeing, it's really fun, to just kind of look at something and break it down to as many different angles as you can in one plane, which is 2D. This next piece is my dad's favorite. He will keep it forever. This is a little downtown view of Kent, and I would love to make one of Akron one time, much, much bigger. Most of these are about 2 feet by 5 feet, something like that. I tend to make work in a fairly large fashion. So as we move into the upper level classes, I started being given a little bit more freedom, and I started definitely playing a little bit more materiality. So just kind of like instead of worrying about line and space, I'm really playing with the materials. And here I'm working with unprimed canvas and just kind of sprinkling paint, letting it to absorb. You really can't see them very well there, but. And just a couple of stuff. Here's I play with coffee and shellac, creating some cool textures. And some more shellac pieces here, some paper, and oil paints. So here I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing, right? If anything else art school will do is ask you to make you figure out what you're doing with your art. Which is probably one of the most terrible things anybody can go through. There's so much pressure to figure out, not only as a young person in life, right, what you're doing, but also just what you're supposed to be doing with your artwork. And what the hell do you know at 21, 22, right? Especially when it comes to art. But there's a lot of pressure to do that, and this is where I start looking at the figure. The figure, I found myself, when you get to these upper development classes, upper level classes, there's a couple issues that you're bombarded with. One is your audience, and the other one is content. So before this, you're just learning how to paint, learning how to draw, learning how to look, and how to relate that onto a surface. At this point, you're being asked to say, what are you saying? And why are you saying it? And how are you saying it? And are people getting that message? And you start understanding that what you're doing is not just something for yourself, but it requires a second party, the person who's taking it in. And once you start taking that into account, it changes everything you're doing. You question everything. And it puts a whole lot of more weight into your decisions that you're making. So the figure became a really important part in my development because I felt that the figure had something to do, it was an anchor. If anything else, everybody can relate to a human figure. Right? We all have it, we know what the parts are, even if they're fairly abstracted. Here I'm still playing with a little bit of texture, working with oil paints, scratching into the surface. And we're going more into kind of exploring the 3D and the 2D world that I live in. So from here, I couldn't just straight up do figurative work. It's kind of boring to me, I guess. Maybe I wasn't good enough. So I was definitely doing a little bit more abstract work with the figure. The figure wasn't an anchoring device, so I started there, and I felt that people could probably pick up the clues of what I was trying to convey because they had that one thing. So, and they're very personal in a lot of ways, a lot of things that I was feeling or thinking about. So this is called carrying some weight. It's a big mountain for that other person. These are about 5 feet by 5 feet. I tend to paint large. Especially with any imagery that involves the human figure, I thought that it's so much more effective if it was as close to life size as you could. Otherwise, you start losing it. It doesn't really have the same effect. This is 6 feet by 4 feet. Painting on wood is probably one of the best things ever. If you're painting on canvas, there's a bounce that you it up, I'm going to go crazy. So after all these things, I've been absorbing formal studies, and then you've been given the freedom to kind of experiment with materials. And you have to find your own voice in what you're doing. I definitely started experimenting with things that kind of mixed a little bit of the things that I started to love, which was figured work and this obsession with sticks that I developed. And this is a piece that was one of my first pieces that I didn't have the right direction of what to do. It was just like, okay, make something. And it was just study of hands and sticks. As simple as that. Imagine trying to explain that to your professor who's like, what are you painting about? Hands and sticks. I don't know what to tell you, dude. So there's just a couple little different things. So as I was trying to figure out what I'm saying, I'm starting to figure out the concept of a narrative, and which kind of ties back to the other issue that you're kind of pressured to think about in art school, which is what are you saying? So I had a teacher once tell me that if you make something that is visually successful in my visual world, you really can't claim it as your own and take pride on that success unless you know why and how it works. Because if you can't reproduce it, it's really not your own. Happy mistakes and lucky mistakes happen all the time, and they're excellent, but you need to learn as to why you're doing what you're doing. And that was a really, really great lesson to learn, but it was also a really hard pill to swallow, because it's like, okay, I pretty much have to know exactly what I'm doing all the time that I'm painting. Talk about pressure, right? I couldn't do it for a long time, actually, because of that. Art school was a little rough on my sensitive soul. But then I just did a little bit more work. I definitely started realizing the quality of my line. It was something that I really kind of honed in. I kind of joke that I draw with paint. I'm not necessarily a painter. It's been a criticism at times that I'm much too graphic. I guess that's your opinion, sir. A little bit more narrative, little projects that I have to go through. So this is all going into my upper level classes. You're giving a little bit of freedom into figuring out what you're doing. So of course comes a time in which you have to develop your BFA show. So the BFA show is a project you work on for a whole semester, and it's your first concise, conceptual body of work. And body of work is something tricky because, say you come up with something you like to paint, right? Great painting, great idea. You have a great concept for it. But then you have to make that happen into like 10 paintings. How do you, you have to milk that. So you have to find that really great concept that is available to you to explore in as many different avenues as you possibly can without jumping all over the board, right? So my BFA show was called What Floats Your Boat, and it was based on the concept of fulfillment. And the different things that, in my personal opinion, and I think looking at things at large, what fulfills myself, and maybe people at large. So, briefly, these are called disorder orders. It's kind of a huge reflection of me, and the back and forth between my obsessive compulsiveness to be incredibly orderly, and then the other side of me, which doesn't give two hoots, right? No children. Here we're looking at, this is called, the grass is green over here as well. And this is actually a really cool story because this was, I painted this painting upside down, and it was red like a target. And I was sick of it. It was not working. I was so mad at it. I put it aside, and I didn't even look at which way it was sitting, and I put it upside down. And I turned around, and I was like, oh, there it is. And it totally makes sense. It had that lower down perspective, like you're looking at your own feet, you're understanding, hey, things are okay right here, right now. So, kind of looking at how to make yourself happy, and appreciating what you have, blah, blah, blah. This one is called The More the Merrier, come on, right? So just speaking about materiality and things that we think we like because of their things. This is a big one. This is 6 feet by 4 feet. And in case you haven't noticed, there's a lot of gold in these paintings. This is one of the love affairs I developed. I used a lot of spray paint, which was my studio mates really hated me for it because I use a lot of spray paint. And when you use a lot of spray paint, it tends to settle everywhere. So after I had sprayed and I didn't go outside because it was winter or whatnot, there would be a nice even layer of gold over everything in the studio. So they knew I was working there overnight. So at least I was working, right? This is a support system. It's a big old couple hands holding up that body. There's a little allusion to Dali, if you recognize the little pusher out there on the corner. This is one of my biggest paintings. It's the feel of spring. It's trying to feel playing with materials. Unfortunately, you can't tell in these pictures, but there's a lot of thicknesses, I used a lot of different materials. So you're going from a pure wood, a little bit of stain, to a pencil mark, to a really thick layer of latex, followed by a scratch. So there's a whole lot of layers. I work with space and layers that way. This is one of my biggest pieces, and I actually had to make it in two. So it's two panels that I tied with bolts. And I love working big. I think it really works to what I'm trying to do, and it works to you flow better. Drawing small, it just doesn't work for me. It's a big problem for me big. Nobody wants big paintings. They don't sell, they don't fit in the walls, they don't fit in my car. It's terrible. It's a problem. So anyway, so that's one of my biggest ones. I think my friend is currently hosting it in his basement, which is good. It's a music studio, so a lot of people get to enjoy the background. Alright, so there's a couple more. I'm just going to skip through. Anyways, so graduated college with this whole body of work, and after you spend like all your time and energy developing this thing and defending it, and then being criticized on it, and you're like, screw this, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't like it. So there's quite a bit of time that I didn't really make any work. You know, leaving art school is kind of one of those tragic things that happens to you. You either go on and make it or you don't. And then you're stuck being like, okay, so career choice is number 2. Career choice is number 3. Okay, all right. So because of, I guess I had to find something to do, I registered myself at the Cleveland Public Art Registry for artists. And they had a call for artists for doing a mural up in the east side of Cleveland in the neighborhood of Buckeye, which is in the corner of Buckeye Avenue in East 118. Woo! Up there, right? It's a different neighborhood. So I submitted this proposal, and of course I delivered it the last minute of the last hour. Procrastinators unite, right? And you know, I forgot about it, and I get a call that I won. I forgot about it, did not accept it. So great, I go and I meet with them, I get my contract, let's do this, they get me a studio, awesome. But they go ahead and they tell me that the wall that they want to have the mural done on, it was a little different format than the piece that I submitted. So this piece right here was probably much bigger. It's a format about this size, right, this ratio. So they wanted me to go to about this ratio, which changed a lot. Gave me a lot of empty space that I didn't have accounted for. So that was a huge challenge trying to figure out how to fluff this piece, right? With limited time. This is happening in March, and by June, this has to be out or something like that. They have a deadline that I met. So one of the challenges was that I had a really tiny studio. So my ended up being a 48-foot long mural, which comprised of 12 pieces of 8 by 4. Had to be made in a space that had 2 functional walls. The third wall was a window with a fan that I couldn't block due to my excessive use of spray paints. And then the other wall had a column or something, I just couldn't use it. So I really could only use with 4 panels at a time on 2 walls. So imagine having to picture a whole picture, 48 feet long. I think it's as long as it's probably these walls. But you couldn't see it in one piece. I never saw it in one piece, actually until the day I installed it. So it was a big challenge. You can imagine these lines I was drawing. Well, that's 3 panels right there. If I wanted to take it to 3 or 4 or 5 panels to kind of continue the composition, blue tape became my best friend. So I would take the tape to the top and just pin it, and then just run with the roll. And just be like, the other 6 panels, no, man, okay. Other panels I constantly had to be moving one at the end, moving everything around, and putting the other one at the very next end to continue it. What I tell you, that was a challenge. It was everything I had to deal with. It was hard. You know, like there's no way to really know what it's going to look like. So, needless to say, it worked out great. I don't have a whole picture of it. Isn't that sad? This is some details of it. I was trying to look at so it's the heart and soul of Buckeye. I looked at historical structures. I used a lot of local maps, kind of give it a history of the space, the neighborhood. Looking back, I wish I had more involvement with the community, and so I would have the direct feedback as to kind of what they see as their place that they live in. My labor studies indicate that really makes a piece of art, public art successful, is really the engagement which it brings to its community. But people liked it, and I was happy with it. And this is me or Francesca. So you can see that it's pretty much close to it. I mean, that's about 3. So that was fun, totally random. I really love the experience of working in public art. I think it's a big distinction from art school is that there was a sense of, especially being that I follow a field, a period in which conceptual art is pretty much kind of what governs. And there's a sense of, you're doing stuff in the air, I mean, it's art for me for a small amount of people. And public art really answered to me what I didn't really connect to that. So public art was something that I was really happy to just kind of stumble upon and got lucky to be selected. So that was in 2007, I think. I'm gonna try to pick this up a bit. Just a year later, I ended up doing a little follow-up show to my What Floats Your Boat show. This is called Still Looking, and it's still looking at the same kind of concepts of, what makes us happy? What's the things that we should just be happy with? And once again, gold made its comeback. This is right on the money. This is on paper. I forget what this was called. This is Sky's the Limit. You can't see the details in this, but there's a whole bunch of lines, electrical lines and stuff like that, like you're looking at the sky, the legs alluding to your own action. So I use a lot of the body to kind of make you think of actions. You can connect with a certain body part with certain movements. And so, like your own 2 feet, you can take yourself anywhere. This is just let it go. Just let it go. So this is right actually in the middle of grad school. So for a couple of years I didn't do a lot of work because I was busy doing grad school, which was a great experience. I got to work at the Emily Davis Gallery, and I got a great, working on exhibitions and visual design, which is kind of the start to the rest of my other side career, if it ever takes off. But in the meantime, I was living in Akron, and this is, I guess, where the story brings you to Akron. Woo! And I was living down in Crossy and Beck, and I started joining, and I joined a group called the West Hill Running Group, and which our dear friend, I'm sure everybody here knows, Karen Starr. She asked me to, if I started running with her, and she's like, "Frank, do you like to garden?" I go, "Yeah, sure I do." She's like, "Do you want to start a garden?" And I go, "Okay." So the Glendale Community Garden, which is behind St. Vincent's Church, small little plot, we started from scratch. Well, Karen Edwards is another great advocate to the community gardening experience in the city and all things related to that. This is right on the top of the Glendale steps, which is one of her little baby projects too. She likes to take care of it, as well as many other community people that have been doing it for so many years. She's like, "Frank, I heard that they need someone to do the project for the Lost Free Summer Arts program for this summer." And I go, "Okay, when is the submission?" "Next week." Okay, so in about 5 days, I put together a budget that, thankfully, to my previous experience, I had it all kind of easily whipped up. And that's how we got me involved to the Glendale Steps mural. So I don't know if you guys have heard of the Lost Free Summer Arts Experience, which is held here right downtown Akron. It's an awesome program. artists will go and interview high school students that have been kind of recruited to show up, and they have to show up and bring their best attire, do a job interview, and bring their portfolio. And they interview with you, and you can ask them to see if they're going to be a good fit for your team. I think there's over 100 kids are interviewed. Each project gets 10 apprentices. I struggled with that word. I could not stay away from kids. Anyway, so we actually got super lucky. I got probably the 10 best kids around. And the nice thing about the project is that it's really hands-on for them. They have to, it wasn't me just telling them, here, paint this. We developed what the content was together. And I came with an idea of what the content was going to be, but how it was going to be on the paper and how it was going to be related onto canvas, onto wood. It was all of them, all doing their own handwork. So we first started with priming the paper, the boards and kind of creating a grid. Then we had them go on and do the drawings on the paper that had a scale and version of the physical space. I provided all the imagery that I wanted to use, thinking about how they're going to be implementing their own panel. So for my 10 kids, I had each of them, 2 pairs per panel. So I have 5 of them. So after we painted them, there's also a little section at the bottom of each panel that gives you all the content, the historical content of the piece. So you're not totally at a loss when you're looking at these things. So it took a long time, hand drawn and hand painted. That hurts people. That hurts. So very briefly, we have 4 panels. If you guys don't know the Glendale steps, they are a WPA structure that was built here by the paintings really represent the story of the panel. So the first panel really tells you about the WPA, the reasons why the WPA existed, the cultural and historical stuff that was going on at the time. The second panel has to do with the artists, so it's an homage to the makers. Looking at the tools and the crafts of the masons as well as the artists. Because we were lucky enough back in the 30s that the WPA created a section of the programming directly for artists. So instead of them going to build bridges and sweeping the roads, they were actually hired for making murals and writing stuff. So that was a really great little homage. The fourth panel has to do with gardening, and it's sort of correlated to the new life that the steps have now and a whole resurgence of gardening all around Akron. And it also ties back to a little bit of history because after the only reason why the WPA ended is not because it was not successful, but because the war came and it became the New Jobs program. So there was a whole new movement to grow your own food so that you wouldn't be taking it from the troops. Whole sense of individualistic sustainability that is very similar to what we're doing right now. So it's pretty cool. It's funny how things go in circles. And the fourth one goes a little bit more just about the steps themselves, a little bit of factual information, a little bit more abstract piece. If you haven't been to the steps, that's the steps look like from the bottom on Glendale Avenue. You really do have to go all the way up to halfway to see them. Don't just pass by. Don't be lazy. A little close-up. The middle panel, which I'm going to show you, that I didn't have a picture of before, it goes right through that doorway that nobody seems to know where it goes to. According to the scripture written onto it, it was Hitler's tomb with 2 teeth. But it's an illusion. You're looking up the step, through the steps to the top of the street. You're looking at the St. Vincent's Church, the forsythia that blooms beautifully yellow in the spring. A little bit of our gardening and stuff. It's a little bit of an abstract piece, but also on the right-hand side to what looks like a mosaic, essentially a map of Akron that's been a little bit diffused. It's pretty cool. Check it out. I was super lucky to have Dominic Calcione be my helper and friend in installing. He's probably the best person ever to be getting built or installed. Do it. He's great. So pictures of installation. And Law 3 are great people. Super small team, they get it done. Definitely recommend any artists out there. They're looking for people every year. It's an excellent experience. And you get paid. So that happened last summer, and then I worked in the winter through the writing stuff, and then we installed it in the spring. Shortly thereafter, our dear Karen Starr hosted me in her beautiful little shop, Hazel Tree Interiors. My friend Pam and I Pam is the founder of Rubber City Prints, which is hosted at Summit Airspace. Check it out. But she's a printmaker, and we knew each other from Kent State, so we have a little show together in which we have a mixture of her prints and my work. This slide shows you a little bit of my larger stuff, my larger scale things. And then this is a wall of what I call my cut-ups. And so I like working big. I like working really big, but big doesn't really work for me because, as I said before, I can't store it, can't move it, nobody wants to buy it. So I started doing these drawings that were, a pretty good size. But then I got smart and I started to cut them up and make them into smaller pieces. Because I like the idea of making them like their own individual pieces that have their own little life. And essentially, I like them to be able to be movable, so they don't have one way of being installed. You can move them around. This is an example of one, and I'm going to pass it around. So if you say to have this one like this, you're welcome to install it like that, or like this, or if there's 2 of them, or 3 of them. You can do that with all of them. It's just kind of extends the creative part to you. So these are just details of that stuff. This is the large piece from which that yellow guy is going to be walking around. You can see it. Yeah, these are intuitive drawings that I like to just kind of not question about. So, remember what I was telling you about art school making you forced to think about what you're making? This is totally not it. This is a complete just rejection of that and saying, screw it, I'm doing something today. And it's a matter of just starting. And once you get that going, it took a few years, but you kind of let go, and eventually you're happy to say, okay, I learned some things, but I can definitely let go of others. So this is some examples of that. So that's definitely part of the work I'm working on right now. It allows me to do work fast without thinking too much about it. Because as a good art student, you really can't move away from the training of, what do you do next? So a few more examples. I'll breeze through that. This is the last one I'm working on, but I am going to cut up. It's not quite finished in my original design, but imagine a bunch of little small pieces of that. And I kind of joke about these cut-ups because for each one big piece, you end up with like 13 or 14 of the small ones. And so one day when I'm rich and famous, you're going to have to collect all 14 of them to really have the full piece. So I'm just putting all that there, so it's a little extra fun for y'all. So I guess most of my friends have heard by now of my pile-ups. So when I'm trying to find inspiration and avoiding being in the studio, I love hiking. And God bless our Summit County Metro Parks, right? Whoa. So I go out and I take a bajillion pictures of what I call pile-ups. Pile-ups are these just pretty much a bunch of sticks, a bunch of things collected that usually, you can tell there's been an energy that's pulled them together. Usually there's water, spring, thaw. They're very dramatic. So I'll take them and then I'll edit them a little bit so I get a little bit higher contrast, and then I make a ton of little transparencies. I cheat, in case you can't tell. But I will use the transparencies and project them onto the wall, and I start with a basic kind of composition that I don't have to think about. It's there for me. It's created by the powers of energy. So I don't have to come up with a decision. It's done there for me. So I really like that about that. So I start with these pieces that once again, I like to paint big, but I've just getting smarter over the years, right? So what happens is that I will actually project them onto 3 canvases, one big image, and then I will work on each one individually to kind of make them their own. But they still kind of belong to the bigger pattern, and that I can still display them together, and they will kind of make sense, but they will also have a life on their own. They tend to have more of a direction in which they're displayed, but I'm flexible. This is another version of it. This was displayed at the art prize. Once again, it's just here. What this allows me to do is to take one theme and explore the different avenues. So, for example, the piece on the left, I'm pulling the darks out. The ones on the right, I'm pulling the lights. In the middle, just figured I'd go rogue. And this is a little bit smaller example now. So, just last week, 2 weeks ago, Summit Reworks, great little program. They take latex paints, they're a zero waste program, and they get a bunch of artists together, and they give you paints, and they give you canvas, and they say, go paint! And they put a little project together, our Summit Art Space, we painted for 3 days. And our little pilot number 7 came to life. It is now still residing there if you want to go visit it one of these days. And right now, I don't know if you guys have been around Akron for a little while, but I think you are. Every winter they do the Advent calendar for the holidays, and I'm working on a banner for that, which I'm excited for. It's 15 feet long. I don't have 15 feet of space in my studio, so at the corner, but imagine that's 15 feet. That's what I'm working on right now. It's going to be displayed and unveiled December 30th at 7 p.m. If you show up and say my name, you get $1 off for ice skating. Yeah, and the other coupons. Okay. So that's my little, just kidding. And this is totally last minute. I'm pretty excited I got a call last week about my friend Courtney who said, hey, there's this guy who needs help painting. Would you help him? And I go, okay. And so we're putting together a little bunch of murals at a Brandywine skier store. And I'm just kind of helping out with the line work and filling in. They're all curious as to why I'm there and how I'm paid. They don't understand that I really love painting that much. So it's pretty fun. Anyways, I'll be hopefully having a show in Rule of Thirds. It's a lovely new gallery right on Market Street sometime this coming year. And I'll see you all there. That's it.